In January 2015, Boston was picked as the U.S. bid to host the Olympics for 2024. And actually, somebody at this table here actually supported that bid. Who was that? Oh, Shirley the Young.
Guilty as charged.
Beach volleyball on the Boston Common, rowing on the Merrimack River, a BMX course at Assembly Row. But enthusiasm was scarce, and pushback from groups like No Boston Olympics, and they were the ones called 10 people on Twitter by Mayor Walsh, who was championing the effort, doomed it and ended up in Paris. Joining us now are, actually it's 3 people from Twitter, the leaders behind the No Boston Olympics effort 9 years ago. Chris Dempsey and Liam Kerr are here in the studio, and Kelly Gossett is on Zoom, I think in the UK. Kelly, it's great to see you. Liam and Chris, great to see you guys too.
Great to be here.
So the whole
Hi,
gang.
guys.
Hi, Kelly.
The whole gang is back. So Jim and I covered this issue pretty closely back in 2015, and for everyone else who doesn't remember the ill-fated Boston 2024 bid and the No Boston Olympic movement, Chris and Liam, I was hoping you could remind people how No Boston started.
Well, Liam, go ahead, because it started in your living room.
Yeah, so Chris and I had met doing management consulting during business school. And so we were experts in taking a big complex thing we didn't know a ton about and then going to experts and getting the very, very, very top line. And it didn't take long to Google around to a few studies and see, hey, it turns out basically every time a democracy does one of these things, they end up regretting it. You know, there's the one outlier in Barcelona everybody talks about, but this is ridiculous. And so we'd meet at night, sometimes late at night, and eventually, put out a one-pager and then a Twitter handle, and then realized, I think upon reflection, a pretty intimidating way, wow, nobody controls the process. No one's in charge. And at that time, there was a power vacuum, post-Menino, pre-Charlie Baker, and it was, wow, this isn't really anybody's job, even though it seems pretty obvious to anyone who Googles for a couple minutes. Let's put the experts out front. Let's put the clear information out front. And all of a sudden, we were on a flywheel where people started reaching out. The more information we put out, kind of David and Goliath situation.
Were you drunk during these discussions, Chris, or were you not?
There may have been a few beers
Okay.
involved.
I want to challenge what Liam just said a minute ago. Maybe there was no, leadership thing. Virtually the whole power infrastructure of this city was on the side of it coming. The mayor of the city of Boston was pretty popular. Marty Walsh was a big-time supporter. The leader of the effort was John Fish from Suffolk Construction, one of the most powerful people in town. And almost every major corporate type, even if they didn't know all the details, thought this was a wonderful idea. So it was sort of the ultimate David and Goliath kind of deal. No? Is that fair?
Yeah, so, Boston Magazine puts out a ranking of the most powerful Bostonians. And the year before this bid got attention, 8 of the 10 most powerful Bostonians
really true?
were supportive of the Boston 2024 bid. So we were going up against some very powerful people, and they had their own reasons to do this. But we really felt that this was not the right thing for the Commonwealth and for the city, that this was going to cost taxpayers billions of dollars, as it has in city after city that's hosted the Olympics, including Paris this year, and that the benefits that you get are pretty fleeting. It's pretty fun, we'll admit, for 2.5 weeks, but you're left with this multi-billion-dollar hangover and a bunch of venues that you don't really need for the long-term health of your city.
How did you get involved in this, Kelly Gossett?
Yeah, I had heard about the Olympics going over budget in other places and the white elephant issue. And I had read about it coming to Boston. To your point, Jim, I think noticing that some of the very big titans of the town were on the other side, I kind of knew. I was working in homeless advocacy at the time, and how challenging that is to get any public resources to that issue, and seeing that these folks were probably going to have a pretty easy chance of getting this through, given how many folks were on that side. So I kind of just reached out to Liam and Chris and was like, let's how can I help? How can I contribute? And off to the races we were from then on.
So Shirley the Young, since we have 3 leaders of the effort to deny the bid to Boston, and I was on their side, and explain to us why you thought it was a good idea.
Well, I wrote column after column.
We know that.
And we've got one right here,
by
the way.
What does that say?
This is 9 years ago, so people were still reading hard copies of newspapers back then.
They still are.
This is the day that the USOC chose Boston to be the official U.S. bid. It says Boston picked to bid for Olympics. And here's our friend Shirley Long right here on the top left saying, instead of saying no, let's be open to the possibility.
Okay, well, why were we open to the possibility, columnist Shirley Long?
Well, because the promise of the Olympics, will put Boston on the world stage. I mean, we just have Trenny Casey here. She's going to be anchoring some of the coverage, and so billions of people around the world will get to see our wonderful city. Also, another promise of the Olympics is that we can finally fix the T. When we have millions of spectators, thousands of athletes descending onto our city, we will have to get the Red Line up and running. Also, thousands of units of housing will be built for the athletes' village. I mean, this can solve our housing crisis.
Okay, well, that's a great question. That we haven't built the housing. The T is still a mess, even though a lot of us think that the new GM of the T is the right person for the job. Liam, starting with you, 9 years after the fact, I know you thought you were right then. You're right now when none of those things happen?
Yeah, we thought a lot about priorities, and we thought a lot about opportunity cost. So of all the best people in the city of Boston, in terms of capacity to get things done, are totally focused on this 2-week party. What's not getting focused on? And I think one other piece, not just this amazing column, and I'm with Shirley, people still read the paper. So this is the headline, Friday, January 9th, 2015. Roughly how long had Charlie Baker wanted to be governor at that point? 22
His
years.
whole life.
He'd been working to be governor. Right? Shout out to Needham High and the governor. So he wanted to be governor for a long time. He wanted to come in and fix some things. I came from the world of education advocacy, Kelly from homelessness, Chris from transportation. We cared deeply about these issues, and we wanted them prioritized. This was Charlie Baker's inauguration day that they announced this.
I didn't remember that was the same day.
I don't remember that. I remember it was, but now it says it all. That's why Charlie Baker was lukewarm. I mean, he wasn't even above. He was barely above the fold.
Right, and so for those on the radio who can't see this, right? So the top
this
of
is streaming. They can check it out.
The top of the front page is about the Olympics. Below that is talking about Charlie Baker's priorities for the state.
Well, that was inauguration day for
exactly.
him, right? The day he was inaugurated.
So he gives his big speech about setting out his priorities, and he gets upstaged by a 2-week television event 9 years later.
Yeah, but
that shows the issue on priorities.
You're the transportation guy, Chris Dempsey, and I have to say, as I said, I was with you all. I thought your arguments were really powerful, but deadlines often get people I mean, this legislature's gone home for 5 months. They're finally doing something. Why they're doing it? Because they want to go on their 5-month vacation in 12 days. Had there been a deadline of whatever that's going to be, late July 2024, isn't it possible or maybe even likely that the legislature that is so fearful of providing historically adequate funding for what you know so much about transportation would have been forced to do it, and we might have been years ahead of where we are?
Well, first, let's dispel a myth that the IOC cares about public transportation working in your city. For 1996, they chose the city of Atlanta with not great public transportation over the city of Toronto, which has excellent public transportation. Mm-hmm. It showed where their priorities are. They wanted to be in the U.S. because they would make more money. But more to the point, getting back to Liam's point about priorities, we really felt that if our elected officials were saying to us that the only way they were going to be fixing the T was for a 3-week event 9 years down the road when we're inviting over a company, then we need new elected officials that care about the people that, like me, who ride the T every single day, who want to get to work, who want to move around the region. That should be the priority, not a 3-week event.
So, Kelly, what was the feeling the day? Can you hold up that headline from the Boston Herald, please? Boston Herald says, bid adieu. What was the feeling in your ranks? I don't just mean the three of you, but your whole movement, the day that Marty Walsh said, no mas, we're not doing this anymore?
I think a little bit of just stunned. We had just been in such a go mode and with so much adrenaline. And I don't know, we did not have a plan for after the summer. I mean, it was really everything was being thrown at it. And we had such wonderful, amazing volunteers and incredible people behind us. And we were small teams, so we were able to be really nimble. But I think that day was just like overwhelming joy for sure that I sometimes still, harken back to. It was a beautiful moment for us.
Do you guys think you're going to win, by the way? I mean, honestly, did you think you were going to pull this thing off, Chris, or you did?
Well, we had a
I don't think that's true.
We had an abiding faith in the people of Massachusetts that when we learn more about what's being put before us for public policy, we're going to get to the right decision. And that's exactly what the polling data showed. So first of all, Shirley's column says, let's be open to the possibility.
Yeah, let's attack Shirley some more. Go ahead.
The early polling actually showed that Bostonians were supportive of this bid, about 55% support, something like 35% opposition. But then as they learned more about this effort, then we, of course, had the winter of 2015, the T shutdown, and people started to say, you know what, maybe this shouldn't be our priority and our focus. The polling was extremely clear. The more people learned about Boston 2024, the less they liked it. And we did have a faith that they would do their homework.
We got to tell the Charlie Baker story, too.
Oh, tell it.
All right, so we walk in. I think we've passed the statute of limitations of off the record, but apologies to
This is the second time we talk about Charlie Baker today, so anyways, go ahead.
So we walk into the cabinet meeting, and we have this deck that...
We've been asked to present to the cabinet about why we were opposed.
Yeah, we didn't crash the cabinet. So, we built out this MBA-type deck in Baker's Kellogg MBA, and he's sitting up front, and it was really cool to see him. He kind of hyped up all his different cabinet members, and he's really focused in on this, and we're given the deck, and like you put in a lot of decks, there's the trick slide where you have something in there, and you're waiting for them to ask that question, so then you look smart. And Baker jumps in faster than any of the other 200 meetings we'd done. And the slide showed that in France, the federal government is the backstop financially. In America, it's the state. And so we were basically doing like a case study, like, let's see how smart Charlie is. He jumps in and says, what's the population of France? In the middle, and Dempsey goes 70 million. He's like, all right, so we have 9 times the risk per person, per taxpayer. And that's, one thing that we had talked about at that time was, what if hypothetically there's a Republican Congress in 2024? What if could we imagine Republicans maybe being unreasonable about providing billions of federal funding to a blue state for security? I don't think we knew how right we would be about that. But Baker cracked the case. He cracked it quickly. It wasn't just because he was upstaged, although I think
that was, since you're telling statute of limitation stories, I'll tell you, I'd never met John Fish, and he invited me out to breakfast. I think I may have told you, Chris. We had a bunch of breakfasts at this fabulous, dumpy breakfast place on Western Ave near GBH. And by the way, he was incredibly cordial and open. He was really...
As he has been to us.
That was a grown-up kind of thing. But the thing I kept saying, which is, it seems to me as a layperson who doesn't have any experience the three of you do, until you can guarantee taxpayers they're not going to get stuck with the bill at the end, it doesn't matter what you offer the city. It's horrible that the IOC want lanes dedicated to them on the highways that are exclusive. All that stuff in me was peripheral. The primary thing was, am I going to end up paying for this? And they were never able to answer that question. Isn't that why it all fell apart?
Yeah, it would have cost us about $10 billion as a Commonwealth. And they talked about getting insurance to cover the cost overruns. They had months to produce that insurance. It doesn't exist. So they never had a credible plan to pay for this. And the more attention everybody paid to it, the more we saw the holes.
Shirley has a quiz for you.
I do. I have a little pop quiz. We have a little sound. And so we're going to play the sound. And anyone, if you can recognize it, just shout it out. All right? Here's the sound.
It's coming.
Here's the sound. Dwight?
It's coming. It's not working.
It's not working?
It was a great idea. We'll save it for a minute. We'll get it going.
All right,
Usually you'll get a second.
Should I paint the scene?
No, don't, because it'll probably be working in a minute.
Oh, here it is.
It's a good quiz. Okay, any of the three of you, what is that sound and where is it coming from? Recorded by Shirley Leung, I believe. Is that correct?
My producer.
Your producer, right. What
I'm
is the
going to guess that those are trains going by Widette Circle.
Wow,
that's really good.
You are incredible. Now, what is Widette Circle, Shirley Leung?
Well... So I feel like I need to give you a prize. Maybe this chocolate cake. So Widette Circle, most people have probably never heard of Widette Circle until the Boston 2024 Olympic bid. And so it's this industrial no man's land in South Boston. A lot of food wholesalers were there. And that was going to be the site of a temporary Olympic stadium, opening and closing ceremonies. We were there Tuesday to see what is it like now? And it remains a no man's industrial land. The sound didn't capture the seagulls. There are a lot of seagulls
crapping all over Woodette Circle.
Yeah, that's who inhabits Woodette Circle now. It's now owned by the T. It's a rail yard storage right now. But that was supposed to be when the Olympics came to town, and after they left, it would have been the infrastructure would have been there to build Boston's newest neighborhood. So instead of having a new neighborhood, it could be probably another half century before we see a new neighborhood.
So is there a question in there, Shirley?
No, I just wanted to know what of Woodette Circle?
Sure. So here in this book,
well, you are
No
propped
Boston
up,
book,
my friend. Let me tell you,
a great photo of Kelly in
that's
Woodette
great.
Circle, standing there.
It looks exactly the same, by the way.
By the way, this book is not very good, but the foreword of this book is
who
excellent.
wrote the foreword?
Some guy named Browdy?
Yeah, I
Browdy?
actually. No, by the way, who wrote the?
Yeah, talk about the book.
Explain who you.
So written by Professor Andrew Zimbalist from Smith College.
He's like the world expert on World Cup and Olympics, and Chris.
And he's the expert, and he happens to live here in Massachusetts, which is another example of how sophisticated and smart the people of Massachusetts are, that the world's expert on this subject happened to live in Northampton, was a Massachusetts taxpayer, and cared about this issue.
Okay, so by the way, Chris has been wearing the No Boston Olympics pin for 9 straight years, which is really impressive. So I'm only going to embarrass Shirley one more time because I love Shirley and I'm her biggest fan. One of the most embarrassing pieces in the history of the globe was the Bostonians of the Year in 2015. Kelly Gossett, do you know who they were?
2015, I think it was John Fish and Chris Dempsey.
Oh, it was. That's right. So there's a picture on the front of the magazine of John Fish, the leader at most of the time, not the whole time, of the effort, and Chris Dempsey, who is one of the 3 people on Twitter. And there's like a dove sitting there. I mean, talk about pathetic staging of this thing.
Do you know how hard it was to get a park
dove
bench?
ready to go? Okay,
and
fine.
a park bench.
Okay, so they take a picture of their Bostonians of the Year. Oh, by the way, the relevance is Shirley writes the piece. John Fish, again, not to be critical because I admire him, said, when history is written, I think there will be a powerful bid legacy. Is there a bid legacy? Thank you. Okay, next question. Kelly, you can answer that. Here's for you, and this is a serious question. Ian Cost did this fabulous podcast for GBH called The Big Dig. And the primary question that Ian asked in this wonderful thing, which is still available, is essentially, can we still do big things in Boston? And Shirley writes at the end of her Bostonians of the Year piece about John Fish and Chris Dempsey, and really about you guys. But an obvious question is whether the high-profile flameout of Boston 2024 might discourage others from pursuing a big idea here. Just take a look at how hard it is for Walsh to hold an Indy-style car race in Southie. That was something that Trenny mentioned before. I think Southie really needed an Indy car race. What's your answer? I'm going to all 3 of you. What's your answer, starting with you, Kelly, as to whether or not we can do big things here?
Of course we can. We weren't just recalcitrant. This was a thoughtful understanding of what the issue was.
Hold on one second. Okay, say it again, please. We had a mic
Sure.
problem.
We weren't just recalcitrant. This was a thoughtful examination of an issue and thought it wasn't in the best interest for the city or the state. We can always do great things. Massachusetts is phenomenal. I think also just remember, we didn't even have a social media account, like an Instagram account back then. This was just a Twitter and us going and great volunteers. Like we can still have issues come to fire and have great people be that cacophony in whichever direction it needs to be, certainly.
What's your answer, Liam?
We want to be smart, not just big. And I think the IndyCar race is a great example of that. When you talk about the big dig, I mean, the IndyCar thing is hilarious. I mean, for those who forget, that was more of a jobs program for the U.S. Attorney's Office than it was.
Tranny loved it. She just saw it in
But
Chicago.
go ahead, Liam. Yeah.
Big but smart. Right? I mean, are we going to have schools that the rest of the country and then world look to like we've done here? Are we going to have marriage equality that the rest of the country then follows? Are we going to cure cancer? Are we going to, I mean, there are things that happen here are beyond showing us off for 2.5 weeks. But if they would have met what we asked for, they could have done it. If they didn't want the express lane for the Princess of Luxembourg and everyone else in the IOC committee, if they didn't do all the bribes everywhere else, if they didn't need to build an 80,000 seat stadium for one thing, we would have said, sure, come along. We can't wait for the NBA All-Star game. We can't wait for the World Cup. We have no problem showing up Boston. There is no doubt we can do big things in this city and this state. Just got to do smart.
Want to make it unanimous, Chris Dempsey?
Yeah, look, when you moved beyond the glossy images of the Olympics, you saw that it required building the most expensive venues at a cost of billions of dollars, and taxpayers would be on the hook. We should think big in this state. Kelly worked on homelessness. We should be attacking that problem. Liam worked on education. We should be improving education in every classroom in the state. We should be fixing the T, which is a passion of mine, and I'm taking the T home today. But we also have to think smart, and the Olympics were never a smart idea. I think the moral of this story, I'm going to actually allow John Fish's words to echo as I think we're closing out here. He called me, he was the leader of the bid, passionate supporter of it. He called me the day after the bid died, and he said, democracy worked. And I thought that was a very wise thing of him to say. He appreciated that we had a civic conversation. It brought out some of the best of who we are as a community, and we made a decision as that community that we have other priorities beyond putting on someone else's television show. We made exactly the right call, and I'm grateful to the people in Massachusetts that they were with us.
Do you have any more props before you go, or no? Is that
I got a beer, a No Boston Olympics beer koozie here.
Sunglasses.
And then, for you, Shirley, these are Boston 2024 sunglasses. They're starting to fade a little bit.
Wait, those are in favor of Boston 2024? These I definitely want. Thank you very much. Congratulations to all three of you, by the way. Kelly, it's great to see you. We miss you here in the United States. And yes, Liam absolutely. And Chris, it was one of the great campaigns ever, and congratulations. It's great to see you. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Well, it is.
Well, this was the day that would have been the start of the opening ceremony.
Wow. Oh, had it been in Boston?
If you look at the official Boston 2024 documents, today was the day of the opening ceremonies.
Oh, wow.
That's why we're here.
That's beautiful.
And we got to spend a little time at Wadette Circle to reminisce on what could have been.